Hey, it's Kevin. Welcome back to the Road Warrior video blog. Today, our podcast, our video blog, again, I have a hard time calling it whichever I call it, it's a little bit of both, is entitled See the USA. And it's funny, I have friends, I had some friends recently who are in Europe. I've had friends who've traveled to Europe numerous times. I have friends who travel to Australia on business and Asia on business. And while that fascinates me, I'll be honest with you, and I get this from my father, I think, if I don't see a foreign country outside of Canada or Mexico throughout my life, I won't feel like I've missed out on something. I'm sure I will have missed out on something, but I won't feel it. Because there's still so much of the USA I want to see that I haven't seen. And I've been to almost all of the 50 states. I think 40 some odd last count. But some of those, South Dakota, I was like 5 years old when I went to South Dakota. I really don't remember Mount Rushmore other than pictures. I don't remember any time I've spent in Montana, even though, well, there's proof I've been there. In my adult life, I've probably been to 30 states. But at the same time, even though I've flown into states, I haven't necessarily spent time in them. One of those examples, when I went to the funeral recently for one of my dear friends, I had to go to Mississippi. Now, I had been through Mississippi. When I lived in Alabama with my first wife, we traveled from Huntsville to Memphis via Mississippi. We went kind of the southern ground route, which was very long, and found out that's not necessarily the way to go. But I was in Mississippi, stopped for gas in Mississippi, stopped here and there, but didn't spend a lot of time. When I was in Mississippi for the funeral, I had a couple of days there, so I was able to spend some time. And it fascinated me, not because of Mississippi, not because of its civil rights history, that was part of the fascinating process, but just how I lived in Alabama, I've spent time in Georgia, I spent time in North Carolina and Virginia, so I've lived in the South. But Mississippi was unlike any of those. Heck, I've been to Arkansas and Missouri and Louisiana and spent time in my adult life in those states, but it still wasn't quite the same. And I think a lot of that has to do with the small towns. I'll be the first to admit I'm not a small town kind of guy. I live in Nashville. Akron wasn't really a small town, even though the suburb we lived in, well, I guess was, but, again, you're 20 minutes from Cleveland. In my adult life, I've mainly lived in big cities. The smallest city I've lived in my adult life was Huntsville, Alabama, which is, size number 120 in America. I don't know if it's the 120th largest metro area. But when I was in Mississippi, spent some time in Jackson, driving around there and doing a visitation in Jackson, and then actually spent time in a small town called Yazoo City, Mississippi, which was noted from famed comedian Jerry Clower. And I had the chance and had some time to kill, so drove around and looked at this small town that sadly has been dying for a long time. And it was cool because, well, while I don't necessarily want to live in a small town, I've come to appreciate small towns for what they were, what they are, and how important they are to America. Small towns fascinate me, everything from the town square to the small businesses to just, well, where it holds on to tradition, and it still tries to hold on in some ways to yesterday. I spend a lot of time in small towns in Tennessee on the weekends, just driving around taking pictures for my Instagram feed. Kevin Mason, my username, by the way, at Instagram. Give you an idea of some of the things I pay attention to, from neon signs to ghost signs to label scar to old buildings to old whatever. History, as I said before, has always interested me, and I think small towns really hold on to that history, or at least try to hold on to that history somewhat. And I'd hate to lose that. I understand progress, and we've addressed this before. I understand the need for progress and the desire for progress, but at the same time, there's just so much to see here in the USA. I can't imagine not seeing it. Food for thought. I know, deep thoughts today. Back with another Road Warrior video blog on YouTube. They pop up there. Kevin Mason Music is my username. You can always subscribe there. Of course, the main blog, the main site, kevinmason.us. You can find them there. The Road Warrior next week. Be back with another one. Have a good weekend, or a good day, or whenever you're watching.